1320 Kings insider, James Hammer living that lake life yesterday. Hammer, how's it going?
Good. I got a little sun, a little more tan than I was the day before, or at least pink.
That's true. Yeah, that's probably a little more accurate.
I'm a little more pink. The freckles grow together on my face, so I look a little darker.
Ham touches his cheeks, and it's just like ice cold.
Yeah.
So hot. Hammer, let's talk. Let's actually talk Kings here, because your guy Sean Cunningham had the opportunity to talk to Mike Brown out at Hughes Stadium this past weekend. I guess I should ask, you were there. Did you get an opportunity to talk at all with Mike?
No, we were vendors for that day. There was no
not all of you were.
There was no roaming about the field for us. There was none of that. We definitely had seats where everyone in the world walked in front of us the entire time. And so me and Jesse,
So I will say this. And I realized this Sunday morning when I was taking that sticker off my shirt, right? We might have been a missed opportunity, guys, because we were vendors. But on the bottom of the little tag, they have like a little circle that says VIP, field access, camera pit, or whatever the case may be. And the FA, which I'm assuming was field access, was not checked off. VIP was checked off, so it means like you couldn't get there or whatever. But the field access was not checked off. So I think we missed the opportunity. We could have went down to the field.
So all we needed was a Sharpie to check it off?
No, the checked off ones you couldn't get into.
Gotcha.
The field access was clear.
I almost went rogue. I did at one point. It was it was a good time though. I mean, there were 20,000 people there. Like the soccer was all right. One of their defenders smacked another defender, one of their other defenders, and was bleeding everywhere. That was like the opening. So I haven't heard Sean's interview with Mike. But I mean, Mike's a great interview. I wish I would have got down there to hang out with him a little bit more. I did see he also hung out with Briggs and like talked to the head coach there.
Well, the good thing about you not seeing the interview with Sean and Mike, it is available on Sean's Twitter page, as a lot of his great coverage over at Fox 40 is. I have a couple of notes that we could talk over that I thought were really, really interesting. Mike told Sean that he's looking forward to seeing how the Kings handle pressure this upcoming season. And that's something that we have talked a lot about with each other, individually on the Kings Beat podcast, whatever. Like it's something like this, and it's something Domas said in a recent interview as well, where this is going to be a different type of season than last year. And Mike even went as far as to say something we actually speculated on just a week or two ago, is you think people are going to be kind of gunning for the Sacramento Kings a little bit because, one, their success last year, two, perhaps most importantly, that stupid beam. And Mike was like, yeah, like there's more pressure on us because people are hunting for us now.
I agree to a certain extent, but I also think that this is a prove-it league. And I'm not sure that anyone comes into this season and circles the Sacramento Kings and says, like, that is the team we're looking to go get, that we're hunting, that we're going to go after, that, like there might be some teams that look at it that way, but it's usually in year 2, year 3, where you start to build up, well, year 3, year 4, where you start to build up some of that cachet. Are they going to surprise people? Probably not. But I still think, like, in the middle of a week, if you're looking at 3 games and you got the Lakers and the Clippers and the Kings, you're probably going to put more emphasis on the Lakers and Clippers because of their history and where they've been than you would the game against the Kings. And so, like, I think that some of it is the case. And I know the beam might become an issue where some teams are like, oh no, we got to shut that thing down. But like, this is still a really good team. And I think that they're built to withstand a lot of this.
Yeah. Do you think that how do you take them realizing that there might be pressure or expectations? Do you look at that as like maybe it's something that's could possibly get in their head, like they could be feeling the pressure or the weight of expectations? Or do you like them being real with what's going on? Like, yeah, this is what's expected of us now, and we've got to match that. How do you read that?
I think that every season you walk into, there's pressure from one way or another. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, whether there's pressure on your coach to get fired or keep his job, whether, your GM may not be around after this season, whether you've got a 16 season losing streak that you're trying to get yourself out of. And, so that's why going through it, really the only way to learn and get through this is to have the experience.
Mhm.
And the Kings have 1 year of experience doing it now. They got 7 games of playoff experience, but 7 games of playoff experience times like 9 or 10 guys. So now we're like 70 games of playoff experience versus where they were the year before, which as a team, they were at 0. And so I think that every year that you've got to consider certain things. And, a guy like Keegan Murray came in last season. He had all kinds of pressure as a guy uh, who was a rookie and didn't know what the league was going to be like. You see Sabonis, there's a bunch of pressure because, he had a free agency window coming up and needed to prove what he could do. De'Aaron Fox showing that he could be an all-star. Like, there's always going to be some sort of pressure. And so I'm not that concerned about that. Like, if you get to if you rewind to last season, we get to like the last 30 games of the season and everyone kept saying, this is when it gets real. This is when it gets real. Okay. They coasted right through it like it was no big deal. So I think that this team is uniquely built compared to other teams in Sacramento over the years to deal with pressure. And a lot of it is one aspect of the game that I think that they're really good at. And that this is a thinking man's team. This is a really, really high basketball IQ team that isn't relying on one player to win a game. They're not relying on one, superstar thing to happen. They're just built to work together, play together, and outthink their opponent. And I think that that's a big deal.
And I think one good thing, and I love the way that you laid that out, James, because I think one thing that the Kings do have going for them is they play the way you just explained, but they have a capable superstar now who can take over, as we saw De'Aaron Fox do so many times last year, and we outlined repeatedly on Kenny's top 25 games of the Kings season. Like, it was a common thing. Here was fourth quarter Fox. De'Aaron did this in the fourth quarter. De'Aaron does that in the fourth quarter. So you hope that the structure of the roster, and Mike talked about with Sean Cunningham again, how much he's looking forward to kind of running it back. He talked about glowingly about the addition of Sasha, but he said the thing he's most excited about is this nucleus running it back. So you hope that they put you in a position where fourth quarter Fox is great, but potentially not needed. The fact that they have a superstar caliber player who can take over in those moments, I think, is extremely valuable for him. Because I'm one of those people who believes every team who wants to advance deep into the playoffs needs one.
No, I agree. You have the one player that has that ability, but then also I think you have 2 of them. I think Malik Monk is has
Oh,
that same
there you go.
type of personality that we could have easily seen fourth quarter Malik, fourth quarter Monk, but you didn't have to have it, So like in the third quarter or the second quarter, those are moments where he really takes over the game, right? And so I think having a very defined system, very defined roles, and then 2 really, really crazy wild cards in Fox and Monk, who are such incredible creators, both for themselves, but for others as well. It does help. Like, it helps to have 2 types of players that are like that. And then a system that is built to systematically destroy the other team. Like, it's to break their spirit with one open 3-pointer after another, after another, after another. And then when you try to close that down, then Sabonis just bullies your big man right under the basket and scores on him. And then you have these other two guys who are just so like athletic and talented off the dribble that can create. And so I really do think that this team, like, it's not just a one-man team. They have a lot of pieces, but I do get what you're saying. They do have the closer, and having a closer is a big deal. Knowing that Mariano Rivera is sitting there in the bullpen waiting for his ninth inning, or that Dennis Eckersley is waiting for his ninth inning, like, that puts the fear in everyone else. You know that you have to do something before you get to that final quarter, because that's when Fox is going to shine. And if you don't have a lead, or if you don't have some cushion in in what you're trying to do, they're going to catch you and they're going to pass you, because that's who they have on their team.
And we've talked a number of different times about the things that we're excited for with this team this year, and the reasons why we're confident in this team this upcoming season. What are some of the things that concern you about this Kings team for this upcoming season?
I mean, I think it's the same thing that we talk about all the time. Like, your concern is what happens if Sabonis goes out long term, and how can they fill that void, because he's so specific as far as what he does as a player that it's really difficult to replace him. And then we talk about the length and athleticism. Like, this team did not go out and get longer and more athletic at the 3 and the 4. They just didn't. They got better shooting, and they've got more skill, that's for sure. But there isn't like this player that's waiting to protect Domas, as far as what he can do as a defender. That's something that I thought that they would address, and they still haven't. But outside of that, like, I don't know that there's a lot to worry about. Every team has weaknesses. No team is 100% complete and just spectacular from top to bottom. The defense is going to be a major concern all the time, because they couldn't prove that they could play defense outside of the playoffs last season. The other 82 games, maybe they had 10 or 15 games where their defense was really, really good. The rest, it wasn't at all. And so you're hoping that that's not going to be the big thing, but that comes back to the athleticism and length at the 3 and the 4.
Hammer, is it realistic to think essentially, and to the best of my knowledge, Sasha isn't known for being a defensive juggernaut, so essentially the same exact roster? Is it realistic to think they could take the kind of steps they need to take defensively to get further in the playoffs?
Sure. I mean, I'll point back to the Golden State Warriors like 2 years earlier when they won the championship. Like, that team had a couple of really, really good defenders in Draymond and Wiggins, and even Looney. But outside of that, who else? And they had bad defenders at a lot of their spots in the rotation. Even, Clay coming back off an injury, and Steph at least is, he knows where to be, but he's not going to lock anybody up. But that's a team that, didn't have a single guy average over like 7.3 rebounds per game, and they were second in the NBA in rebounding. And, they're number 2 in the league in defense, with most of the rotation was older players that weren't really great defensive players. So, yeah, I mean, you can get better by being together longer and by playing on a string together, and just learning the tendencies of the players around you, and learning how you have to protect specific players in your rotation a very specific way, to help them maximize their, talents. So, yeah, I mean, I expect the Kings to be better on defense this season, whether they brought in defensive players or not, because they've played together and they have a little bit more, sort of, I don't know, vibe with each other, and they should, in chemistry. And then you get an off season, and then you get a preseason and a training camp together, where this is where you sort of fix a lot of these issues.
We've talked about it a number of different times, switch gears just a little bit, but it seems like for sure now we are entering the last days of Jordy Fernandez, assistant coach. Because he's out there with Team Canada right now. They got Windhorse doing pieces on him. it's a foregone conclusion, in my opinion, that he's a head coach somewhere next year. How does that? Have you been in situations where you've seen guys that are assistant coaches and they pretty much know, like, this is it? They're going to be going to a head coach position at the end of the season or something like that. And if you have, does it affect the day to day for some of these guys? Is it a weird, I don't know, dynamic in the coach's room with a guy that people know is on his way out?
I don't think it is. I mean, like you would think it would be a strange dynamic when you have a coach on your roster that used to be a head coach. And that never seems to be an issue. Like a guy like Jay Triano or Igor Kokoskov, guys that were head coaches before and now they're on your roster. And like, I think everybody's pulling for a guy like Jordy. They see what he does. I don't think anyone thinks that like mid-season he's going to get a call and leave you mid-season. Although, like there was talk last year that when the Atlanta job came up, that they may come to the Kings and talk to him about Jordy. Like, look, assistant coaches are kind of, I put in like 3 buckets. You have your guys who are always with one coach and they just kind of move around with them, and they're one of their guys, right? They're trusted associates. So like I can tell you, Ryan Bowen has been with Mike Malone since his days in Sacramento. He's still there on his bench in Denver. And so you have these guys that are always with you. Dave Yeager had a bunch of guys that were like family with him. And then you have your up and coming guys, your climbers, like a guy like Jordy. But Jordy's not the only one on this Kings roster, that on this Kings coaching staff, that I think you can put in that category. I think Doug Christie will be a head coach, or can be a head coach in the league. I think they have Luke Laux that is following the same exact trajectory that we've seen from Jordy. So like, look, I think that there's all of these different types of coaches that you have. Guys that are going to be there long term, guys who have already done it, or they're done. They don't want to do that anymore, and they're coming back, and they just want to be part of the system, which is where I put like Jay Triano. And then you have guys like Jordy, and Jordy deserves a head coaching job. And to be honest, he should have had more stories written about him last season. And one of the reasons why he's probably not a head coach is because he didn't get all of the publicity that he should have got last year. And the one other thing I'll point out is, he was a defensive coach on this team. Like, and this team was not a good defensive team. And I'm not putting it on Jordy, but I'm saying
that's what it sounded like. Shots fired by James.
Well, no, I mean, I think that that's something that people need to look at and say, okay, there could be a reason why like some of these teams are like, okay, maybe he needs one more year, and maybe the Kings need to prove that they can do this one more time.
Or defense is overrated.
Well,
defense is hard. It's hard to get a bunch of offensive dudes who have always scored 20 points a game their entire lives to go out and play defense. Again, I'm not putting it on Jordy. I mean, Mike Brown has been known throughout his career as a defensive coach, and he had the 25th best defense in the league last year, or 24th, 25th. Like, these are things that you got to look at. And I remember there was one coach that I had written, he's the head of the defense and in a previous iteration of this team. And he reached out to me like, man, don't put that on me. Like, we all coach together. And it's like, yeah, but they literally say you're the defensive coordinator. Well, yeah, but this is not just me. I'm like, oh no, I get that. But it's you. It's on you to a certain degree. Like, can't blame a head coach for wins and losses and like take all that and put on an assistant. That doesn't happen. So I don't know. Did Jay Triano like create this magical thing that, he's just moved through the NBA for 25 years and all of a sudden he finds like he has a Ken Epiphany and like runs some new offense that no one's ever seen, and like all of a sudden it's the greatest show on earth? Like, it happened. And so I'm not going to take away from what Jay did, but at the same time, there are reasons these things happen. It's the players that you have on the team. It's the, like the chemistry they build and all that stuff.
I think with stuff like that, you have to, like, if you're trying to think of a good example, Tom Thibodeau was probably a great example. Like, he was the so-called defensive coordinator for Doc Rivers, right, in Boston. And that was a really good defensive team. And he had job opportunities that he didn't take until the Chicago one became available. and the Chicago one picked the Chicago one fit Thibs perfectly because those were the type of guys he needed to play defense the way that he wanted. Not all coaches have the luxury of sitting on a championship contender with 3 Hall of Famers on it and waiting out job opportunities. Mike had been in, he'd been with the Golden State Warriors, but he hadn't, people hadn't been, knocking down his door to be a head coach. So, sure, would he like the team to be better defensively? Probably. Would he like to do some different things defensively? Probably. But I think some of those, what we would refer to as a great defensive team, James, I think those are often, times when coaches are there and they can structure a team the way they want to rather than coming over and taking over one that was, well, less than stellar like Sacramento was.
Well, I remember Elston Turner going on the radio in Sacramento because he was taking heat because the Kings weren't a great defensive team during the early 2000s. And it was like, well, first of all, go get me defensive players if that's what you want.
Rick Adelman absolutely will fight you over. Like, he contends we were not a bad defensive team. He told us that. Man's going into the Hall of Fame the day after he's getting announced into the Hall of Fame. He was like, they said we were bad defensively. I don't think that we were.
No, the only thing that matters really is your net rating. It's how many more points you score than the other team. So you can be on paper a quote unquote bad defensive team that wins a ton of games because you score way more than you give up every night. And that, in the end, that's really all that matters. Like, they need to figure out a way to get stops to win games. And they got to figure out ways to, if their offense is this great, then put teams away so early that your defense doesn't have to look bad at the end. Or, and the other thing I'll point out too, the Kings were actually pretty solid defensively in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. Early in the game, when they're getting, hanging out and having a good time and playing, that's one thing. But when the chips were down, this team was very good in the fourth quarter defensively. They're very good in the playoffs defensively. But, there are certain things that you just can't, you can't disguise. And you see it in the playoffs a little bit, but also in the regular season.
Well, I was just going to say, it's also one of those things, at least for me, where I look at a team style of play. If your style of play is one where you're going to get up and down and you're going to score, but that's going to lead opportunities for easy buckets for the majority of the game, for a lot of the game of the other team. Yeah, your points per game is going to be high or something like that. But there's going to be a time in that game where, all right, you slow down a little bit offensively. You, as a defensive unit, say, let's buckle down and play defense. It's kind of a dangerous way to live, especially in the NBA, because you don't want these guys to get started. But it also makes sense. Like, for instance, I was telling my son over the weekend, he was playing soccer, and he's a striker or something like that. And he was a striker and was trying to, like, be where the last line of defense was and defend there and then go from there and strike all the way to score. I was like, bro, you're not going to make it through the game. Like, you're going to wear yourself out. And sometimes these teams, I don't want to say it's okay for them to take plays off or anything like that. But if we're running up and down the court and we're playing at this, breakneck speed or whatever, I'm not going to make it to the fourth quarter if I'm doing the same thing on defense too. You got to use substitutions, pick your spots, things of that nature, and know that when it's winning time, that's when you're able to dig into the tank a little bit more and pick up on the defensive end. I think that happens a lot more than people give it credit for. I know everybody wants people to play like hellacious defense 48 minutes, but that doesn't always happen with these great teams.
Yeah, and I would say this too. When you have a finisher like De'Aaron Fox, like, his team was better defensively in the fourth quarter. They picked up the slack more in the fourth quarter. And there are times where Fox was excellent defensively, especially late in games. But there are other times where you allowed him to be that gifted offensive player. And we always talk about, like, saving something, leaving something in the tank. Well, while De'Aaron was taking all of the load on the offensive end, he had his teammates carrying him on the defensive end, covering up, like helping him out, getting rebounds, things that were making his job easier. And so I really do think that like there is a possibility for this team to improve greatly on the defensive end. I'm not saying that they can be a top 5 defensive team or top 3 defensive team. And even when I bring up that Golden State Warriors team and how good they were, like the reason I bring them up is because Mike Brown was the head coach of that team. Like he values specific things, and there are things that this team can do to improve that they didn't do last year. And they have more competition for minutes. And that's big. Like if you're going to have players who aren't playing hard on defense, they're going to lose minutes to other players that are. And that's just kind of the way it goes.
Can you do both? Can you be the stellar offensive team that Sacramento was and do what you need to do to significantly improve defensively?
Yeah, I mean, I have a tough time thinking this team could like reach a top 10 defensive like metric. But could they be a top 15? Yeah. And if they're a top 15 and a top
And
5
a top offense
and a top 5, top 3 offense, they're going to be tough. You know, that's when you start talking about this crazy stuff that Kenny's talking about with you know, being a contender. But you got to do it first. You can't just keep saying like we could be. You got to actually get the defensive stops. You've got to be better defensively and show that you can improve.
James Hams says it's crazy that Kings can contend for a title.
I know. Tweet it out, Jesse.
Dot.
I mean,
95.7 the game's already clipped it.
No, clip. Hey,
James Kings Insider says Warriors are trash.
I want that defense to improve for sure. I need that top 5 offense.
Yeah,
I need that. That's the bloodline. That's the baseline of what you do. That's your superpower, so to speak. I need that top 5 the offense.
We'll talk about it. We'll seriously, not kidding this time. We'll talk more about that with James Ham when D'Lo and Casey return here on Sacramento Sports Leader ESPN 1320. There.
Oh man, Madison.
Yeah, you sound like hell.
I don't feel bad. It's just my nose is all congested.
CJ Stroud. Oh, we're going button down today. All right.
Dan Orlovsky.
You look like he just went on a bender or something. Like, why does his hair look like that? Why do you look like that, period? Like, did you not know you had television today?
He's probably been on since 5 a.m.
He looks terrible.
Poor Dan.
Jeez, he looks awful.
Poor Dan.
Jeez.
They got to do like 9 shows.
You gonna be a Cowboy fan now, James, so you can root for Trey Lance?
That's sacrilegious.
Yeah.
No. Leezy asked, who is the Kings' best defender after Davion?
Fox. Maybe Harris.
It's probably Chris Duarte. Yeah, I think the Kings have a lot of position defenders. Like even Harrison Barnes, like his metrics were good this year after the previous year. I think Keegan Murray will be a better defender. Herter didn't have a great defensive season. Monk won defensive player of the game a couple of times. And his defensive metrics early in the season were tops on the team. Mike Brown kept telling us that.
Who had top?
Malik.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Herter struggles like in a one-on-one. I actually like personally feel like Herter is much better defensively as a 3 than a 2. I think he can hang as a 2, but against fast guards, you know, there are a couple of teams that switched on to him, would get the switch and then take him off the dribble. And that's because it's not just Herter or Keegan, because Keegan had the same problem. It's that the Kings don't have a rim protector. So that's why that happens. If you have a defense that's shifting over and supporting one another, then that doesn't look as bad.
Did you see what's the name?
I might bring that Malik thing back to the air.
Your boy Austin Reaves played a really good game the other day.
Mm-hmm.
He's been tearing it up for Team USA. I think we need to apologize.
Is it time for an apology already?
I think because I keep seeing these stats. He's dropping like 15, 16 or whatever. And I just think back like maybe he shouldn't be there.
He fits good on that team because now that I'm seeing it, because he can create his own shot. That was always a difference between him and Kevin Huerter to me, is the shot creation off the bounce. Austin's really good at that.
So Huerter's not bad at it. I mean, offensively, Huerter was like top 20 in 2-point field goal percentage. Like his ability to create, it's a little awkward sometimes.
Yeah. And I don't think Austin is good on he can use the pick and roll. He's good in orchestrating that way as well. And that's not a strength of Huerter. I still think they're about the same ball player, but Austin Reaves is really good at off the bounce. He's really good.
Yeah. That's a good point someone brings up, that Ant-Man has fallen in love with the Heat culture that Lizzie brings up. Is there unfair advantage to your head coach being there as part of the coaching staff for Team USA?
I mean, the way people go about things nowadays, everything they're always looking for an upper hand. So, yeah, they're going to use that to their advantage for sure. Yeah. And if you can get one of those jobs, if you can get your coaches, in those spots, it's a leg up. It's a leg up for you.
That's how these super teams get made right here.
That's facts. Yeah, that's facts. Coming back, James. Back here with a 1320 Kings Insider, James Ham. Appreciate you tapping in wherever you are. Hammer, I'm going to ask you to dive a little deeper into something that you said during the commercial break, and I actually had to pause and ask you to repeat. You were talking about players on the Kings that had really high defensive metrics, and I feel like the way I'm setting this up is coming across terribly disrespectful. It's just not the first thing that comes to my mind when thinking about this player. But a guy who has really good defensive metrics that caught my attention during our commercial break conversation was who?
Yeah, Malik. It's something that Mike Brown brought up during the season early on, and he kept saying that Malik had led, they have their own defensive metrics that they're concerned with, not other, all of these other types of metrics that whether it's box plus minus or, defensive rating or anything like that. But throughout the season, especially early in the season, Mike Brown had mentioned multiple times that he thought Malik was one of their better defenders. And I mean, I haven't looked up the stats to see if it proves it out. I'm actually really close. But yeah, I mean, so on 3-pointers, he allowed 0.1 more better field goal percentage against than a standard, and overall he's plus 2.3. But this is on a team that had that was really bad defensively. Their metrics overall are bad. And he's where this team had really good health, and their starting unit was in place the entire season, right? How many games did you see Fox, Huerter, Barnes, Keegan, and Sabonis together? It's 70 plus games. So that isn't always the case with the second unit. Mike Brown made a lot of changes throughout the season. We had Chimezi Metu have moments. We had Rashawn Holmes have some time. We had Alex Lynn at the end of the season. We have Terrence Davis in and out of the lineup. We have Trey Lyles in and out of the rotation. Well, Malik had to deal with that. And so, like, his metrics are strong. They're not like incredible, but for a 6-man, they kind of are. Because if I were to go look at Jamal Crawford or Lou Williams, that type of player, and go through what they look like, their defensive metrics, I guarantee you it's not good. I remember Nate McMillan was caught off guard when they got Jamal Crawford in Portland and was like, "Hey, Jamal, I'm going to need you to play defense, get a little closer on your man." He said, "Coach, I don't do that." Like, that's not what I do. I'm the dude chucking on the other end. That's me. And so I think, like, to have a player who's within range of being league average or better as your 6-man, especially with the pieces moving around him all the time, that's really strong.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And I think about Malik Monk's game a little bit, and he's, like I said, he's a special player. I always wonder what he could really do given more opportunity on both sides of the basketball. But he's got quickness. And, they always say about guys that are quick or explosive on the offensive end, you can use those same attributes to be a top flight defender. So I never thought about him getting better on the defensive end or, being as good as the numbers kind of saying he was already on the defensive end. But I don't know. What if he decides to lock down a little bit more and that helps that perimeter defense? Then you got a two-headed monster on both sides of the ball with him and Davion coming off the bench. I mean, that's something else that could be special for this team.
Yeah, I mean, less than 10 feet, because someone made the point that he gets shot over all the time, that he's quick, but he's not very big. Less than 6 feet, he's negative 0.4. Less than 10 feet, he's plus 0.9. Like, these are stats that are good. Again, inside of the 2-point line, he 2-pointers, he allowed a plus 1.7 on shooting percentages, but that's when you have to factor in the fact that the Kings didn't have a shot blocker and that they don't have anyone to deter you in the paint, and the rotations, whatever, like, he was playing with different players, but it's not like Chimezi Metu's coming in and averaging a block and a half a game. Like, these are things that he wasn't getting from the players around him to support him, and for him to have those kind of metrics when you factor in some of the things around him, that's pretty good.
Malik is just kind of one of those. He's like I don't know what the right word, risky. Like Mike used to. Someone asked Mike one time last year, do you get nervous when Malik has the ball? He said, yeah, like every time. Something like that's. It's like paraphrasing. It was something along those lines. He's similar on the defensive end, though, isn't he? Like, watching back, I think it was the Clippers game. It's the most recent game we watched. Like, he takes risks on the defensive end, and when they hit the highlight reel, like, they really pay off.
Right.
He's
but
a gambler.
That's not always the best characteristic to have, because if they pay off at a lower percentage than they don't, that might be something a coach tries to deter you from.
Malik, and I'm careful with saying this because it comes off as if he doesn't study or doesn't do his homework, which I do believe he does 100%. But Malik sometimes can go a lot off of instinct and vibes.
Yeah.
Instinct and vibes. Right?
How'd you know to jump that lane, Malik? Vibes, bro. Vibes.
Yeah, he's a gambler.
That's how James lives his life, just off vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. He's fully a gambler. And I get it. Like, you need some of those guys. But I think that when you have De'Aaron, who can be a little bit of a gambler, specifically on the offensive end, and then you have Malik, that might be like your limit, because then that's where your guys like Chimezi Metu or Terrence Davis came in, where when they're making mistakes as well as these players, like, you're giving a really, really long leash to De'Aaron Fox and to Malik Monk to do these things, because their energy that they bring has a way of changing momentum and of getting the fans in the game and all these things, right? You can't have a whole team full of guys who make mistakes. That's just not the way it works. And if you do, you're going to get you're going to get beat more often than not. So I think by having a guy like Malik, but then putting a guy like Chris Duarte next to him, and having a guy like Malik, but putting Sasha Vezenkov next to him, all of a sudden you clear up some of that stuff and you allow him to be the true creator that he is, both for himself and for others. But I think that that's where you really start to, thrive and have him take ownership of that second unit.
I always say, man, like defense, being able to do something individually, on defense like a Davion Mitchell, that's one thing. That's something that you always want to work on, keep somebody in front of you. But you can not be the best at that and still be a top flight defender as long as you understand the team defensive concepts. You understand where you're supposed to be in rotations. You understand the communication that's needed. You understand where's your next spot to go to. If you can do that, you may not be able to stay in front of somebody one-on-one. But, I mean, a lot of the times, that's not even what's happening out there on the court, right? Like, very rarely do they just go, all right, so one-on-one, this guy dribble you down, you try and stay in front of him, and there's no help around you. You know what I mean? So that's, I would like to say, a small percentage of the time. If you can understand where you're supposed to be and where you're supposed to be as a team defender, I think that right there can help you improve your rating or how you're looked at as a defender in this league.
Yeah, I think that that's also where we're going to see, the Kings, if they are going to excel on the defensive end, it's got to be within the team concept. It's not, you did not go out and get outside of, like, Duarte in his rookie season was like really close to an elite defender, but like in small bursts. Like, you have no idea what he's going to look like. You missed most of last season with injury and stuff. So like, you didn't go out and outwardly get like just great defensive players. You have to play a defensive team concept. And like, it's good to have like the versatility of a guy like Monk. And I know, Kenny, you brought up that you'd like to see him get more opportunity. And I never really feel that way. Like, I feel like most games I get just enough Malik Monk. Every once in a while, he's so good that you need more. And Mike Brown always plays him more. There are other times where it's like, okay, this isn't Malik's night and he needs to stop forcing it. And I could see a little bit less. So I think opportunity, like if he leaves because he wants to go start somewhere, okay, like that might happen. But his role in the NBA, in my opinion, is what he's doing right now is perfect for him. Just like it was for Bobby Jackson, just like it was for Lou Williams and Jamal Crawford.
Yeah.
Like, having the ability to change the momentum of a game, to have the ball in your hands, to be a guy who can, go out there and just let it all hang out and like put your stamp on a game. He wouldn't get that playing next to De'Aaron Fox for the entire game as a starter. He won't. Like, the fact is that Kevin Huerter probably could shoot 5 more threes a game, but he didn't like force it. He didn't ask to do that. He wasn't the guy like saying me all the time. And that's how this team really succeeded, is by having these specific players play roles that make sense for them as players. And I think Malik fits right into that. Like, could there be a point where Malik plays 27 minutes a game? Sure. In the playoffs, Malik played almost 30, and that's fine. It's a small sample size against a specific team where he really was a matchup problem for them. That's not the case on 82 games of a year. Like, you pick and choose what games Malik is going to have those big nights, just like you do pick and choose when Harrison Barnes or Keegan Murray or Kevin Huerter have a big night.
James, you said something interesting there. You talked about fitting in like with a defensive concept, and that got my attention because you're talking about Chris Duarte and how good he is defensively and what a difference maker he could be on that side of the ball. And admittedly, this was in the playoffs. We all thought the same thing about Jared Vanderbilt, but Jared Vanderbilt really, really struggled on the offensive end. Hypothetically, Chris Duarte is a fantastic fit with the Sacramento Kings. Defensively, he is a defensive game changer, perhaps similar vein as Davion Mitchell, but he doesn't fit on the offensive end. What do you think ultimately takes precedent?
Well, I think the best thing that Chris Duarte has going for him is that he played in his rookie season with Domantas Sabonis.
Sure.
And so they know how to use him. They know how to put him in a position to succeed. And again, I've compared him to Dylan Brooks as a player, like
Mhm.
similar style of player, physical, like no nonsense. But he doesn't do a lot of things that are like out of the scope of the offense. That's what I think separates him. He doesn't take a bunch of ill-advised mid-range jump shots. And I think he'll fit in perfectly with the offense. Like, I think he'll be, I don't know, 37, 38, 39% from three. And he'll be great as a catch and shoot guy, and he'll know his role. And that's as long as he gets enough shots. I mean, it's hard for a player to get into a rhythm if they're only playing like short bursts and they're not playing every night. But I think he has that type of potential as a shooter. And I don't think that there's a problem fitting him into the offense because he's already done it. He's already done it with in a system with Domas in the past.
James, let's switch gears a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on Noah Lyles? What do you have to say? I don't know if you're familiar with the track star who, was just so perplexed that the NBA calls the
World
the
champions.
world champions. I understand his point. I just don't understand why he was so upset about that.
I understand his point. I just don't know why he voiced it.
You know what? I get it. I would just tell him that if you take the Denver Nuggets and put them up against any team in the world, they're going to win by a gigantic margin. I guess like maybe you can't say that about every sport, but certainly the big sports in the US, when it comes to baseball, I think you would still be the best. You could field the best team in the world. When it comes to the NFL, of course, no other country plays football like we do. So I don't know. It's a weird hill to like die on. Like, and I'm not sure. Like, okay, you go ahead and make your like $80,000 a year, and they're over there making league minimum is 1.1 million. Like, it's just a strange. I don't get it. Like, why are we comparing what's in it for him to go out there and do that?
That was a really weird battle to pick.
Really weird battle, but maybe he's crazy. What they say, crazy like a fox.
Yeah, because none of us knew who he was before that, right? Yeah. We had no idea who he was.
I'm not always about the all publicity is good publicity.
COE.
Yeah,
that's in over everything.
This doesn't feel this doesn't feel it. But you know what is it? Talk about content over everything. COE. Here's the question everybody should be asking themselves. He told us during the regular season. Perhaps he was telling us the truth. Is Austin Reaves him?
Oh.
Austin Reaves is cooking.
LeBron told us.
He said on a floor that contained LeBron James, I am him. And now he's lighting up Team USA.
He's playing really well. He's a good ball player, too.
He is good.
I always thought he was a good ball player. I thought it was crazy that he was on the main team. I was like, that's a reach, but he's playing really well.
Well, yeah, but how many players on the select team would have done the same thing? Like, I don't know. Like, again, you talk about being world champs. You go up
hates Austin Reaves.
Well, no, you go up against most of these countries so far, and have they been physical with Team USA? Yeah, because Team USA lacks physicality. But I'm not saying he's not a good player. I mean, he very well could be a really solid NBA player. I just don't know that we should sit here and like put him on an all-star team and put him on the Olympic team when he's had one partial season where he was extra good, averaging 12 points a game.
Well, for the record, he's not on either, but he's having a nice little run here.
Yeah.
He's a good ball.
No,
he just doesn't look like a good ball player, and I think that's what throws everyone off.
I think what throws everybody off. Well, see, I don't think anything throws people off.
Come on, man. We know what throws everyone off.
No, I don't. The thing that irritates people in this situation is that
he looks like Woody Harrelson.
No,
and he's out there trash talking.
But the thing that
the way Woody Harrelson did in White Men Can't Jump.
The thing that frustrates those people off is the fact that they think he could be doing the same thing if he played for the Utah Jazz. He would not be on the USA team. It's this Lakers push that is getting him all this, and I think that upsets people. Which I agree.
Why
with.
would that? Why would that? It's been
Because
that way
the only
forever. Why would
reason
that upset people? It's been
they don't like it forever. They're not gonna like it.
I don't like. I would have
His whole career is based off being a Celtic. Sorry, Jesse's just been in there too quiet. I had to say something. To
Whoa, take it easy, pal.
If Paul Pierce was a Utah Jazz, would he be a Hall of Famer? It's a fair question.
I wouldn't even be his fan if he was on the Utah Jazz.
Well, just
yeah, but also like if you were to come up with the top 100 U.S. born NBA players, where's Austin Reaves on it?
well,
He's not in the
I
top
don't
12.
know. Like you mean like ever or right now?
No, right now. Right now.
Well, yeah. You have there's a long list of players who don't want to do this.
No, I get it.
Did you see
Yeah,
Fox talk about it a little bit?
I did. What was the exact? I never dreamed of being an Olympian or something along those lines.
I was never. Yeah, I never dreamed. I wasn't tripping off the Olympics as a kid, but that might change in the future.
I'm kind of glad he said that though, because sometimes people act like it's everyone's dream to represent their country. Like that sounds good. Like, no, it's not. It's not. I think some of the people who have said that have been lying. I just think they're like, yeah, we'll do it. Sure.
I think it's interesting too. It's not every player's dream to like be a Hall of Famer. A lot of them just like, hey, I made it. I made it to the league. Now I need to vest. I need to make it to 4 years so I'm fully vested. Oh, I need to make it to 8 years so I get more money in my, my retirement. So
there are far more players who play for the check than the Hall of Fame status James just spoke of.
Gilbert Arenas.
Facts.
A lot of money. And he's happy, as he should be.
Hasn't made enough in his mind.
Well, I still hope that De'Aaron Fox makes the Olympic team, even if he's not really interested. Which he didn't say he's not interested. He just said, I didn't grow up thinking about that. He said it might change.
I'm going to put Grant Hill's face on that old Obama hope poster. That's the only way. That's the only way. Like full on change to USA basketball that's coming. That's the only way is if Grant Hill personally makes that happen.
Well, Team USA 2-0, by the way.
As they should be.
Yeah.
Hammer, bro, it's September at the end of the month. You realize your little off season's almost over, pal. You're
almost over.
I have it on good authority. Your schedule's about to get a little busier.
I think my schedule is about to get a little busier. My month of September is booked out, and then we start going. But yeah,
when's do we have a training camp start date? By the way,
it's the first week of October. It's actually pushed back. I think it's October 3rd is media day, and October 4th is the first day of training camp. Yeah, like everything's pushed back a week this year. It's usually the last Monday of September, and this year it's the first Monday of October. So
that ties in, like if the schedule that we got holds, like the game 7, if there was a game 7 of the NBA Finals, it's like the last week of June.
Yeah.
It was really late.
It's a late season.
Yeah, it was really late.
Yeah, I was wondering where they're going to add time, especially with the in-season tournament. How are they going to add time to the schedule? Because when you shave a week off and then the season is pushed back a week, it's way later than it normally is. The Kings open, the 25th?
So,
the 26th? Yeah, and usually it's the 19th or the 20th.
Is it pushed back, or is it just going back to like the normal levels of like 4 or 5 years ago?
Oh, see, someone said it's pushed back because of FIBA. That's possible.
That makes sense.
Oh,
okay.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, we'll just end the show not knowing what the hell we're talking about. Then it's because
there it is.
Still
well, wait a minute. Isn't
20? You got to
next year's an Olympic year, right?
Yes, I think.
Oh, so it's going to be that thing where guys are in the finals. I can't, because it was 2020.
Yeah.
Even though it was in 2021,
it
was 2020.
3 years this
so it's 2024. So it'll be that thing where if they're in the finals, they can't, or it'll be a tight turnaround for such and such.
Yeah,
it happens. It happens every.
Because I think the Bucks, right? Like Middleton was on that.
That's right. and he flew with Devin Booker,
He
if
did,
I
that's
remember
right.
correctly. Yeah, they
Yeah.
flew to the Olympics together.
And that's when Dame had us all waiting. Remember? He was
Oh, that's right.
we had to
Yeah.
wait before
That
he
was
got on the plane.
so annoying. That was Dame low-key been annoying us for a couple of years now. Great stuff from our 1320 Kings insider James Ham, as always.